So hi, Alex. So I'm a business developer for Kiro France, and today we're going to have a chat with Simon Kerridge. That sound right?
That
Founder
sounds right.
of Languedoc Real Estate Property Finders. So the first question I'm going to ask you is just tell me about yourself.
I've been an estate agent for over 30 years. I've been living in the Pézenas area of France for over 20 years, since 2001. And I followed a girl, and that's how I ended up here.
That's just the way it always happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when did you set up your agency?
So I started off when I got here. I was sort of dabbling in property and doing a bit of this and a bit of that, and bought a couple of properties with a friend, and then started up the agency a little while after that. Initially, and I think that there's a bit of confusion with my company name, because initially I was told that I wouldn't be able to get my license to be a registered agent. So I set up the company to be a property finder rather than to be an estate agent, with the
Okay.
idea that I would work with other agents, I would get buyers as clients, and the clients would pay me to find a property for them. So I realized very quickly that that wasn't going to work for me, because I could not cope with the way the agents here worked. It was so unprofessional, so amateur, and I couldn't deal with that. So I went back to exploring to get my carte professionnelle, which I succeeded in doing. Officially created a limited company in, I think, 2006. One of the problems I found here is that one of the frustrations is that agents in this part of the world find it interesting and attractive to hire foreigners to work for them because of the language. But as you say, the qualifications most of the time that these people have are zero, no experience, no qualifications. There seems to be very little in the way of training, and I think that goes towards this business being in a lot of cases, quite an amateur business, which is a shame, because the fees that people pay are
Yeah.
very high.
Yeah.
They should expect and receive a very high level of service, because it's a big fee.
Your buyers, are they mostly foreign, or you've got both French and
We've got all sorts. I think we try and specialize in the foreign market. So I suppose our speciality is representing primarily foreigners to sell their properties, but not exclusively foreigners, of course. And our buyers are primarily foreigners, but of course not exclusively. So we do our best to advertise our properties to both the national and the international market. And we've got French buyers, we've got German buyers, we've got English buyers, Scandinavian, Belgian, Dutch, American, Australian, all across the world.
And would you say most of them are looking for second home, like second properties, or they
Yeah,
retire?
most of them.
Sort of
Most of them.
profile clients.
Yeah, I think the majority of our clients are looking for holiday homes. In a lot of cases, when the clients are perhaps slightly older, it might be a holiday home that could turn into a second home, and then perhaps turn into a full-time home. So for me, for example, I consider a holiday home. I always say to clients, a holiday home is something where you count your time using the property in weeks, and a second home, perhaps you count your time in months. And as the clients get older, they've typically got more availability of time, and therefore more opportunity to move away from a holiday home into a second home, and then spend more and more time in the house.
Do you notice any decrease in sort of English buyers with Brexit or?
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. I think Brexit has undoubtedly has added new layers of complication to people, to British people wanting to travel here. It's interesting, because I think the public perception is perhaps that Brexit has caused lots of English people to sell property here, and the reality is that's not what we've seen. It has definitely reduced the number of inquiries from British buyers, but in the majority of cases of the sellers, what we're seeing is that a couple of things. So if people live here full time, perhaps they reach a certain age when they would like to be closer to their family back in their home country.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very common reason for sale. The other reason for sale is people who buy holiday homes don't necessarily buy that holiday home with the idea of using that and keeping that forever. After a period of time, they want to do something different because they very often feel that if they have a holiday home here, they feel guilty if they don't use it.
Yeah.
So, I've got clients who've had holiday homes for a long time, and now they want to go and do something different. They want to travel the world, but they feel guilty about traveling the world if they've got a second property that's sitting here empty and they're not using it. So that's another reason. So, yes, we have certainly had some British clients selling since Brexit because it's become more complicated to stay here. But in reality, for us, it's been very few.
Okay, so yeah, it's not as bad as it may sound, or
Well, not for us and not here. And the other thing is that we've seen where the inquiries from British buyers have decreased, inquiries from other European countries have increased. So very recently, we've had a marked increase in inquiries from Germany, Sweden, and Switzerland.
yeah, that's what I've heard from quite a few agents as well, that the Germans were sort of overtaking a bit sort of number of demands and viewings throughout France in areas where international buyers are looking at buying properties.
Yeah. It's interesting, and of course, with technology now, and with Google Translate and other options like that, it means that we can, on a very basic level, communicate, certainly in writing,
Yeah.
to nationalities.
And how do you deal with so I mean, obviously the first messages you get, especially from portals like us, could be in German or whatever. When you do viewings, when you get to sort of signing the sales contract, do you hire translators? I mean, what
So
options do you have when you?
the first thing is that we find that, generally speaking, the Europeans have a pretty decent grasp of the English language generally. So English language is often the common language. Sometimes it may be French. Then in most cases where we are able to communicate at an acceptable level to clients in English, then we would be the ones who would assist the clients for the sales contract, in meetings with the notaire, in translating things as we go. Now, sometimes, I had an example yesterday, the notaire insisted on having an official translator there, and it was horrendous. The translator was not able to do the job as effectively as I could, not just because I'm not saying I'm fantastic in French. I'm saying that we're used to the subject, we're used to the terminology, we're used to explaining things to people. So it was an interesting meeting yesterday. Look, at the end of the day, all the notaires work differently, and when it comes to the legal work, the notaires call the shots, and we have to go with what they want to do. Fortunately, that situation doesn't present itself to us very often,
Yeah,
and in most cases, we are able to, I think, very effectively communicate with the buyer and explain what this all means.
it's interesting because I bought a property a couple of weeks ago, and I've got a brother living in UK buying a property, and the process is totally different.
Very different.
And it's probably one of the rare things, I would say. France is probably, it's sort of more organized. You sign your compromis, you've got 60 days to get a loan, blah blah, and then you fix a date, done. He's on his side in UK. It's been 3 months and still waiting for lawyers to get information from the sellers. So just nothing's sort of happening. It's and it's probably the only time I can sort of come up with an example where France is probably more organized than UK. Normally UK is pretty sort of straightforward.
Well, of course, I've experienced both systems. So I worked the UK conveyancing system from 1990 to 2001, and then I've worked the French system, conveyancing system, from 2001. I think the French system is a lot simpler, which is good. I think the fact that you typically just have the one notaire makes things simpler. And we always make a point of explaining to the buyers and, of course, the sellers that the notaire isn't technically acting for you, the buyer, or you, the seller. The notaire is there representing the state to make sure that everything is legally correct and all the information is given to the parties involved. So it is a simpler system.
Coming up to another question. What's your biggest challenge?
Oh, that's a good one. Biggest challenge. I think probably the biggest challenge, I think there are different parts to that. I think one of the biggest challenges at the moment is to remember all the information that we have to give to people, because things are changing all the time. For example, on the side of the sellers, since Brexit, there are now different things that the sellers have to do. There's now the need for the sellers to use a fiscal representative. That takes a lot of explaining. It's very complicated. There's extra fees involved. So it's a lot of stuff that we have to remember. Probably the other biggest challenge is, I think we work very differently to the other agents here. And I think our job, which is how I was taught to do the job, is that we're invited into the home of sellers, and we're invited to explain to sellers who we are and what we can do for them, and then to give the sellers our opinion on the state of the market today and a potential valuation of their property. Now, I think we approach that in a much more detailed way than the other agents here, giving sellers examples of properties that have sold, giving them information to back up what we've said. And I think one of the challenges is to overcome the fact that the other agents tend not to do that. The other agents tend to walk into meet with the seller and simply say, how much do you want for the house? And I think we're always trying to be as realistic as possible. And when you find yourself, so property market moves all the time. Property market goes up, it goes down, sometimes it's level. But if you find yourself in a property market that is perhaps moving down, and you're giving a valuation to the client that is perhaps a little bit disappointing to the client, and perhaps lower than other agents have given, the challenge is to explain to the client that we're saying this because this is what we believe based on the evidence that we have, based on historical sales, etc. We're not giving you a low price to sell quickly. So yeah, a big variation in valuations from different agents is a challenge.
So it's definitely a problem in France, and it was for me when I was an estate agent in Vietnam as well. The same story. A seller being sort of disgruntled with my estimation of the value of the property, and telling them someone's valued it a lot more. And you find that in France, it's almost like a sort of commercial strategy to say, yeah, your house is worth 400,000, it's worth 350, so they can get the mandate. Then they wait, and then 6 months later they tell the owner, sorry, I can't sell it, it's too expensive. But they've already signed contracts. It's I can imagine your frustration.
I think that happens here, except I think that what we typically find here is 6 months later that the agents haven't contacted the owner to say it's too expensive, because they only contact the owner if they have a viewing. So look, there are many different ways that people can do this business, but the way we approach the business is to try our very best to give the buyers and the sellers the best advice possible, the most accurate advice possible, so that they are in a position where they can make the right choices for them.
I've got another question for you. I think it's the last main question.
Okay.
what's the sort of most exciting thing happening in at the moment? And the opportunities that are coming up for you where you are.
Where we operate, if I go back a step, okay. So when I was working in London, I was in central London. The last sort of office I was working in was in Notting Hill Gate, and we had residential streets full of Victorian properties, and they were kind of all the same. And they were done differently, and people had different styles of decor, etc. But a 4-bedroom house at number 15 wasn't going to be that different to a 4-bedroom house at number 21.
Okay.
But where we are here, all the properties are completely different. You've got the older properties that are all completely different to each other. You've got the more modern constructions, which are all quite different. So I think one of the exciting things is, particularly with the older properties, is going to see a property, arriving at the front door, and really not knowing what you're going to find. The number of times I've seen, I've arrived outside a house, maybe a classic maison de vigneron, and you've got your front door and then you've got your big garage doors, and it looks unremarkable. And then the owner opens the garage doors and you walk in and you've got an amazing courtyard with palm trees and a swimming pool, and it's like you're stepping into a different world. So that's exciting because we never know what we're going to see. And I still find it very, very exciting to, even after more than 30 years, I still find it very, very exciting to negotiate a sale and find a middle ground between the buyer and the seller and agree a sale. That's exciting. There's so many parts to this job, but yeah, really not knowing what we're going to see behind a front door is still exciting, even after over 30 years.
No, I see exactly what you mean. I mean, and the excitement as well to sort of be the middleman that sort of negotiates and find a common ground between the seller and the buyer.
Yeah.
And that really sort of just, really shows, why real estate agencies exist as well. Because if they were just the buyer and the seller dealing together, they probably couldn't sort of find a common ground and end up making a successful transaction.
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe. I think that a good agent will help a lot in a negotiation. And also I think there's an awful lot that comes after that. Managing a sale, there are always bumps in the road. There are always problems to overcome, and a good agent will manage the sale effectively and solve those problems as they go along. Keep everyone updated so everyone understands what's happening, and keep everyone happy. And I do believe that if you have a good agent, and if you remove that agent from 10 sales and just let the buyers and the sellers take their chances, a lot of those sales would fall through. I think that we have a very, very high conversion rate of sale agreed to signature of compromis and signature of acte de vente. We lose very, very few sales because we work very hard in solving those problems as they come along, and they do come along every single time. So it's interesting, Alex, because I think that in a lot of cases, the image that the buyers and the sellers have of this job and what we do is that we walk into a house with a client, we walk in to a kitchen and we say to them, look, isn't the kitchen lovely? Look how the sun comes through the window and look at the wonderful garden. And 10 minutes later, we walk out with a check for 20,000 euros. That's the job. That's what we do. And it's so far from the truth. So yeah, I still love this job. I'm still passionate about this job, and I'm extremely thankful that I can still feel that way after over 30 years.
You're lucky.
I am very lucky.
I've got one last question that wasn't part of the scripts, but I'm a bit curious. Okay. Most of the buyers, international buyers, are they cash buyers or do they get loans?
I think it's a very good question. So I think that we are I think we're extremely fortunate in our company that because in the majority of cases, the foreign buyers either have cash in the bank or they're able to release equity on property they have at home, and effectively they become cash buyers here. So we're very lucky, and I'm very appreciative of this, that we have very few transactions that involve conditions of mortgage, because that has become a much more complicated arena. I believe that the number of French banks who are actually offering mortgages has decreased a lot. I think there may be only 2 banks that are offering mortgages, and I think people's ability to borrow has decreased. But I also do think that I think people have to keep things in perspective. I think we were spoilt with French mortgage rates of 1%. And if mortgages are at 3-4% now, relatively speaking, that is still cheap money. And I think we've been spoiled. And I think that where buyers need mortgages, I think the buyers need to perhaps recalibrate their expectations. And I think they need to accept that, sure, we'd like to buy a 3-bedroom house, but maybe we can only afford a 2-bedroom house.
Yeah.
So, let's investigate that. Let's reduce our expectation of how much we can borrow so that we don't overstretch ourselves. And I think buyers need to be a little bit more pragmatic in that. But we are very, very lucky that the vast majority of our sales are not dependent on finance. And I'm very thankful for that.
The national market at the moment, it's like you say, the banks were giving money away at 1%, and now it's the circle of 4 or 5% on 25 years. So obviously, the purchasing power of this national buyers has gone down quite heavily, and then on the other hand, the prices went up, skyrocketed in many parts of France just after COVID.
Yeah. I think we saw prices move up here. I definitely wouldn't say they skyrocketed, but we had an increase in prices. But I think there's a correction underway now. I think that stopped. Really, we felt that at the end of last summer. But I think that when we're trying to pay close attention to the market and monitor it, I feel like we are ahead of most people in the sense that most other agents, I think they're in denial. I don't think they are ready to admit or advise their clients that the market is changing. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that we're still seeing property coming on at prices that are too high and properties are not selling. The demand overall is still very, very healthy here. And we are agreeing sales. We are keeping very busy. But just to be very clear, that's not because our philosophy is absolutely not value low, sell it easily. Absolutely not. Our philosophy is to do our very best to pitch the prices as accurately as we can. It's not complicated. If you put the price too high, no one's going to want to buy it. If you put the price too low, the sellers are not going to be happy, and you're not going to have any reputation, and you're not going to get any referrals to other clients. So it's a question of finding the middle ground. But we are keeping very busy, and we are very, very grateful that our international market in most cases is a cash market.
It was a pleasure to have this chat and hear about your business.
Thank you.
And yeah, I hope as well that working with us, that you are going to get more of these international buyers that are buying cash.
Well, listen, Alex, this has been great fun. I've really enjoyed it. Would love to do it again. And we have definitely seen an increase in client contacts coming from yourself. So I hope that will continue.
It will. I'll keep an eye on it.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay, well, I'll leave you. I'll say goodbye, and it was great having a chat with you.
Thanks, Alex. Speak to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.